deer hunting near Deadwood during the winter of 1887 and 1888. Two prospectors, McMillan and Hubbard, managed to capture their game. In 1871, William Henry Jackson captured a scene atop Mount Washburn, showing a man on horseback accompanied by a pack mule loaded with supplies. The fall of a large totem in Quitine, Indian Territory, in 1883. These totems were important cultural symbols for local tribes, and their destruction represented forced changes to native traditions. Interior of a ranch in Fremont County, Idaho, in 1872. The simple, functional setting reflects the pioneer's lifestyle, with firearms and equipment on display, essential for survival and protection in the region. Looking Glass, chief of the Nez Perce tribe, appears on horseback in front of a taipai in 1877. He was a key figure in native resistance against American settler expansion in the 19th century. Apache Camp in Arizona around 1880, revealing the simple and improvised conditions in which they lived, in harmony with the surrounding natural environment. Around 1899, the portrait of a Sioux man known as Sunflower highlights the presence and culture of native peoples in the Old West. The image reflects the importance of Sioux identity and traditions during this period. Bloody Knife was a scout for Custer's Yellowstone expedition in 1873. His role was crucial for surveying the land during this mission in the American West. On January 19, 1891, the 7th Cavalry Camp at the Pine Ridge Agency in South Dakota housed troops in organized formation. The site served as a military base during conflicts and the administration of native areas. Barker, known as the Hermit of the Black Hills, in his cave around 1900, living in isolation and in direct contact with the wild nature of the region. A Klondike Gold Rush prospector, likely in Alaska, resting exhausted in 1898 after enduring the harsh conditions of the trail. Around 1889, settlers known as Boomers prepared to claim land in Oklahoma Territory. These groups took part in the run for open land lots, facing challenges as they established new settlements in the region. The wagon known as the Deadwood Coach, photographed in 1889. This type of vehicle was used to transport passengers and goods along Old West routes. Around 1897, Klondike prospectors were camped in Skagway, Alaska. These workers were part of the gold rush, facing harsh conditions in the mountainous region. In 1885, the Dodge City Cowboy Band gathered musicians who enlivened events and festivities in the Old West, bringing music and culture to pioneer communities. These groups were essential for entertainment and helped strengthen community spirit in often isolated and challenging regions. Charlie Meeks, a cowboy in Nebraska, photographed in 1886. Mounted on his horse, he carries a rifle, symbolizing the daily life and challenges faced by cowboys. During General George Crook's expedition to the Black Hills in 1876, mules were readied and loaded with essential supplies, such as flour, amid a difficult march marked by food shortages. In 1858, stagecoaches were the primary means of transport for passengers and freight between towns such as Santa Clara and San Jose, California, connecting communities and facilitating trade in the expanding West. Between 1863 and 1869, the locomotive Oneonta in Cisco, California, represented the advance of rail transport that drove the economy and expansion in the Old West. Around 1880, the Cheyenne Indian Police served security and law enforcement functions within Native communities. This group, composed of tribe members, played an important role in mediating between local traditions and external authorities. The first election in Guthrie, Indian Territory, took place in 1889. The image captures the activity and involvement of the local community during this historic moment, marked by political and social growth in the transition toward statehood. Between 1887 and 1892, ox teams were common in Sturgis, Dakota Territory. These groups used large herds of oxen to haul supplies and cargo on long journeys across the West. A long line of mule-drawn wagons crossing Dakota Territory in 1885. These caravans were essential for transporting supplies and equipment, helping to connect remote areas during westward expansion. This image shows a group of Warm Spring Apache Scouts working for the United States Army at Tule Lake, California, around 1872. View of Main Street in Corinne, Box Elder County, Utah, around 1869. The simple buildings and commercial establishments reflect the lifestyle and early development of the region during westward expansion. In 1871, the interior of a Crow tribe teepee reflects the nomadic lifestyle and traditional culture of the Plains tribes, with structures adapted to the environment and daily needs. Around 1891, Oglala women and children are gathered inside an uncovered teepee. This scene shows aspects of communal and domestic life among Native tribes at the time. In the 1890s, Main Street in Wilton, North Dakota, presented a simple scene with wooden buildings lining the road. This simplicity reflected the early stage of development of pioneer towns in the region. Around 1895, a family lived in a rustic log cabin in New Mexico, reflecting the simple, self-sufficient lifestyle of pioneers at that time. The log construction provided shelter from the elements and served as a home base for families who helped shape the expansion of the American West. During the 1860s and 1870s, a passenger vehicle specially designed to carry visitors in the Sutro Tunnel in Nevada ran on rails. This ingenious creation facilitated access to the mine's interior, representing advances in underground transport technology. The first water supply works began in Perry, Oklahoma Territory on October 10, 1893. This project was vital for urban development and improved living conditions in the region during the colonization period. Fred W. Loring and his mule, known as Evil Merodactyl, in Prescott, Arizona, in 1871. This record reflects daily life and the means of transportation used in the Old West. Workers gathered at the Gold Hill Mine in Quartzburg, Idaho, in 1885. Mining was fundamental to the region's economic development, attracting men seeking fortune in gold and other mineral deposits. In 1898, at the Bobtail Mine in Black Hawk Canyon, Colorado, workers extracted minerals at one of many sites that drove economic development in the region during the mining era of the Old West. In 1889, workers posed at the entrance of the Montana Mine. This mine was part of the intense mineral extraction activity in the Old West, especially in Montana. This historic image, captured between 1879 and 1894, shows the oldest house in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Around 1866, workers operated in the tunnel of the Gould and Curry Mine in Nevada. Mining was an intense activity with operations that required specialized equipment and labor. Cowboys gathered at the Llano Hotel in Midland, Texas, in 1888. The hotel was a meeting place for ranch hands and travelers, reflecting social life and culture in the Old West at that time. This historic photograph shows Summit Street in Arkansas City, Kansas, around 1889. The street is bustling with people, horse-drawn carriages, and commercial buildings lining both sides, reflecting the growth and daily life of an Old West town at that time. Perry, Oklahoma Territory, around 1894. The image shows daily life with shops, a restaurant, a meat market, and residents gathered together, reflecting the town's growth during colonization. At the Indian Day event in Omaha, Nebraska, on August 4th, 1898, members of various tribes gathered wearing traditional attire and showcasing their culture before a diverse crowd, celebrating their identity and heritage. This photograph shows Colorado Springs, Colorado, on May 1st, 1880. The image captures the city's urban expansion at the foothills of the mountains, showcasing pioneer architecture of the era and the natural environment in the background, with the mountains providing an imposing backdrop for the growing city in the western United States. This photograph was taken in Deer Lodge, Montana, in 1868. It shows the main street with several typical commercial buildings of the era, including Wilson's California Bakery, Highland City Meat Market, and P. Valaton's store. This historic photograph, taken between 1879 and 1894, shows a photographer capturing an image of Laguna Pueblo in New Mexico. The image shows dozens of covered wagons gathered in the streets of Caldwell, Kansas, in preparation for the land run in Oklahoma. Taken in April 1889, this scene depicts the pioneers' atmosphere of anticipation as they eagerly sought to claim a piece of land in the newly opened territory. Osage people in Northern Indian Territory in 1879, posing in front of their traditional dwelling, reflecting the lifestyle and culture of the era. This image, captured between 1886 and 1902, shows a traditional Cocopah dwelling in the Colorado River Delta of Baja California. The simple structure made of natural materials reflects a lifestyle adapted to the local environment, highlighting the connection between indigenous culture and the land. In the late 19th or early 20th century, the Boot and Corn General Store in Colorado served the local community with a variety of essential supplies. General stores like this were central hubs for trade and provisioning pioneer towns. Between 1900 and 1905, 3 miners in Goldfield, Nevada, used a wagon loaded with camping supplies. This type of transport was essential for carrying equipment and provisions to remote mining areas. Cabin in the Yukon Flats region, photographed in 1901. The rustic structure, surrounded by dogs, highlights the isolated lifestyle adapted to the natural conditions of the area in the early 20th century. Between 1890 and 1894, soldiers and patrons gathered at the Fort Keogh Saloon in Montana, an important spot for rest and socializing during military service in the Old West. Between 1880 and 1900, the Short Line Depot in Boise, Idaho, was an important railroad hub. Trains like this connected towns and facilitated trade and passenger travel in the Old West. Around 1903, 2 Apache women are depicted around a campfire. This scene reflects aspects of daily life and traditions in Native communities at that time. Around the 1890s, a group of people poses beside a horse-drawn carriage. These vehicles were common for transporting people and goods in rural regions of the Old West. In the late 19th century, a stagecoach ran between Rifle and Meeker, Colorado, representing an important means of transport and communication in the Old West, linking distant communities. Around 1880, traditional dwellings of the Temecula peoples in California showcase their construction techniques using natural materials, reflecting a sustainable adaptation to the local environment. In 1867, the cattle loading point for Texas herds in Abilene, Kansas, was a vital site for transporting and marketing livestock, helping to shape the economy of the Old West. Around 1898, stacks of silver ingots were piled up in Colorado, evidencing the intense mining activity that fueled the region's economic development in the Old West. Between 1876 and 1879, Mexican women in San Antonio, Texas, made their living by selling birds. This activity reflected a form of sustenance in communities that combined tradition and local trade, demonstrating women's participation in the economy of the time. The photograph shows an early street scene during construction in Flagstaff, Arizona, around the 1880s. Small shops and establishments are already in place, while other structures remain under construction. The image presents an aerial view of Placerville, California, captured between 1845 and 1855. The scene reveals a developing community with various wooden structures spread across the area, surrounded by the mountainous and forested landscape typical of the Gold Rush era. The photograph shows Chestnut Street in Leadville, Colorado, between 1877 and 1879. The main street is lined with small wooden commercial buildings, and several people walk along the dirt road. The image shows a panoramic view of Colville in the Weber Valley, Utah, around 1868. Small wooden buildings and fences define the properties, while a main road cuts through the town toward the hills in the background. The Laramie Hotel in Laramie City, Wyoming, around 1868. The two-story building with multiple chimneys stands beside the railway tracks, reflecting the importance of rail transport to the region's development. This photograph shows the main street in Coleman, Texas, captured in 1882. The scene reveals a typical Old West town with various commercial establishments, such as grocery stores, saloons, and assorted shops, along with wagons and horses parked on the dirt road. A Mexican dinner at Military Plaza in San Antonio, Texas, taken between 1865 and 1880. The scene reveals an outdoor community gathering with people seated on benches and tables, reflecting the culture and social life of the era in the American Old West. Around 1872, part of Satanta's Kiowa Band was present at Fort Sill in Indian Territory. Those leaders and their communities faced major challenges during the transition to reservations and pressure on their traditional lands. In the 1890s, establishments like the Weaver Brothers Saloon in Breckenridge, Colorado, were central gathering places for socializing and business in the local community. These saloons reflected the vibrant culture and social life of the Old West. In the early 20th century, horse changes on the Myrtle Point-Roseburg stage line in Oregon were crucial to ensure efficient and safe travel. These stagecoaches connected distant communities, carrying passengers, mail, and goods. Around 1897, about 40 native canoes were gathered in Dyea. These vessels were essential for transportation and fishing in the local communities. This photograph was taken around 1855 in Sierraville, California. It shows a diverse group of people gathered on the main street of the small town, with simple wooden buildings lining the road. Around 1875, a native chief from Texas is portrayed alongside women in front of a traditional dwelling, reflecting the lifestyle and culture of local native communities.